Hello and welcome to another episode of COVID Launch Success Stories, where I interview some amazing founders who have launched successfully in the pandemic and are just doing incredible things. So I am honored to introduce you to Aggie Mutuma. Have I pronounced your surname right, Aggie, first of all?
Perfectly, yes.
Okay, great. Who is the founder and CEO of Mahogany Inclusion Partners? And you are just doing some great work. And so, really, the purpose of this interview is to inspire those of you who may be thinking about launching, maybe sitting on the fence, or just want some guidance and inspiration of how people are actually doing it, navigating this season successfully. So, let's get into it, Aggie. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Katrina. Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. So, what is your story? So I like to start from the beginning. Like, how did we get here?
Sure, no problem at all. Gosh, it's a very long story because I'm really old now. I jest. So I guess I'll start because it does link into what I do and what I do in Mahogany Inclusion Partners. So I think I will say that I've always known that I want to do something to do with people.
Yeah.
I'm a raging extrovert, a proud raging extrovert. So I've always known I want to do something with people. I want to help people. And when I think about who I am, why I was put on this earth, I think it is to spread confidence and spread love. You know, my daughters laugh at me all the time because we talk about superpowers, and they ask what superpower I'd love to have, and I said, "Yep, the ability to just spread love everywhere."
Love that.
So I guess that's where it started, and that walked me into personnel, and as it was called back then, but HR, leadership and development. And so I've led people teams for organizations that you'll know quite well, such as Dreams, Beds, Mothercare, Tesco Stores Limited, McDonald's restaurants as well. So big organizations, but also smaller organizations as well. And what I've always seen and what I've always definitely felt in my work is that people need to be happy at work. You spend so much of your waking time at work, most of your working time at work when you're in those working golden years. And I always felt a bit of sadness that a lot of people weren't fulfilled. They weren't happy. They didn't feel like they belonged. They didn't feel they had a voice. All these things which are really important to you feeling great as a human being. So I guess very early on, even without knowing what I was talking about or what it was, I started thinking about inclusion.
Yeah.
And then if I take into that as well, my personal experience of growing up in the UK as a Black woman, and the experiences that I'm sure a lot of us will share around racism, walking down the street, hearing the N-word, go back home, monkey noises. And I was actually having a conversation with someone who works for an organization that has the British flag as their emblem. I said for a long time, that flag for me, the Red Cross and even the Union Jack for me were symbols of hate that triggered me. So again, very early on, I said, that isn't right. People shouldn't feel like this. And I want to make sure that whatever I do, people don't feel like this. They feel included, feel like they belong. Fast forward to my career in HR, as I developed in my career and became a manager, then a head of HR, then a director, I noticed that there were less and less and less people of color. By the time I became an HR director, I was often the only one in a room of any color. In a networking event, I'd be the only person of any color. And when I spoke to HR, my colleagues around inclusion, their focus was gender, and that was it. It was just gender. Yes, I'm a champion for diversity and inclusion. We must look at gender. And I would have conversations like, yes, we should absolutely look at gender. Have you thought about disability, race, sexuality, and how that impacts the work experience and how people feel? There was very often, no, they hadn't thought about that, about gender. So I found that a little bit odd. And then there was one defining moment, which I'll never forget. I went to a round table of many HR people, HR directors, and some really strong protagonists of the gender pay gap report. And they actually worked with government and spoken to government about the gender pay gap report. And yes, we must do it. And it was just about to come into legislation. And I was applauding them. I said, oh, you've done a great job. You know, we absolutely need to track the data because the data tells a story. The data hopefully can help us take action. and see improvement year on year. Now we've got the gender pay gap and it's coming to legislation. Great job. When are we going to do the same with the disability pay gap and the ethnicity pay gap and the ethnicity one? And these women, and there were women who had been so strong about the gender pay gap, were sort of saying, well, it's a bit difficult. We don't want to overload employers. And the rest of the roundtable agreed. They're all like, yeah, it's too much for employers. Let's just leave it at the gender pay gap. And I'm saying, you mean not yet? Do you mean in a couple of years? Like, no, let's just leave it there. And for me, I was just staggered. I thought, as much as I don't have a disability, I still care about disability discrimination. I still want to ensure there's fairness. So I guess there's that. And then also, I am sorry, I told you it was a long story.
No, good. I've quite a few questions to ask you afterwards.
I can imagine. And then also, I'm an executive coach. So I do a lot of coaching of people who are in senior positions. And by virtue of where we are in the world at the moment, a lot of those people were white, male, heterosexual people who had obviously achieved success in their careers. But when I spoke to them about inclusion, there tended to be this reticence to talk about it. And as I explored that more, I came to understand that they found the word inclusion actually excluded them. They felt though every time we talked about inclusion, it meant not them. We were talking about women, we were talking about people of color, we were talking about members of the gay community, and all of those things weren't them. So they actually felt excluded from the conversation. And they also felt fearful of being called sexist, or being the latest person, being #MeToo'd, or being called racist for saying the wrong thing, or being called homophobic. So they found that subject quite difficult to engage with. So I guess taking those three things, so taking my HR experience and the people space, everything from recruitment right through to the end and all the bits in between, and how inclusion weaves through all of that from a policy, process, culture point of view. Also taking my own lived experience and my views around, I want to do something that means that people feel included, they feel safe, they feel like they matter. They're enough, and that you're enough as you are. I want to help people feel like that. And then taking the experience of people who find that conversation quite difficult. That's where Mahogany Inclusion Partners came from. And those are always my key focuses around how do we ensure that inclusion is embedded into just the way we do things. It's not something you do on top of everything else. It's not something you do on top of leadership. It just is good leadership. How do we enter into our conversations around inclusion in a way that respects everybody's perspective and where they're coming from, meets them where they are, and supports them in the comfort and help them to allay their fears in a good way? And then how do we give people safe spaces where they can express how they're feeling, where they can talk about what's happening in the world, and how things like, as an example, Asian hate and the conversations, how they're impacting them as a person, how it might impact them at work, or obviously the current situation that's happening now in Palestine. Yes, it's happening so far away, but we're so connected to the world now. We have families, communities, our own colleagues who are feeling what's happening there. How do we create a space where they can say, look, I'm not 100% on it with work today, this is how I'm feeling, and give them that support? So like I said, a really long answer to that question.
No, really, really interesting though. And it's so interesting how our life gives us clues. And so often it is, we reached a point in life where the only point that can answer all those things that life has brought us to is to start our own business. Because actually there's so many passions and things pulling us that it's like, actually, I no longer fit anywhere. So I have to create this for myself, or I have to create what I'm seeing in my head. And that brings us to that point. So let's talk about defining moments, because I think every entrepreneur that I think I've spoken to in this series has had a defining moment. And I think everyone has them. Everyone has them. Now, how do you get to the point where that defining moment isn't just that and we move on? Because we've all been, as a fellow Black woman in business, we've all been in that position where it's like, oh my God, like this is huge. No one actually sees it. And this is, do you know what I mean? But sometimes we stay and we sit in it because we think we have no choice. Do you know what I mean? But how do you absorb those moments and not do something constructive with it, and not allow it to overwhelming. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you do that?
Well, I'm a little bit of a serial entrepreneur, so I'll start there.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you where it comes from, to be honest. I've always been of the mindset that, you know, I can see things that I would love to change, that I'd love to have different. And I'll look for the answers. Are they there? And if they're not there, I'm like, well, why don't I just do it then? What didn't I see if I can answer that question? So to start with, my first venture into entrepreneurship. I giggle because I didn't really like it that much anyway. But at uni, I would go for interviews and, you know, apply for jobs. And there were lots of people talking about, well, you haven't quite worded that right, or you haven't got quite got that experience. So I looked around for sort of coaches who can help. I think it's called that. Don't know what I called it at the time. It wasn't coaching, but that's what I was looking for, who could support with that. And again, I didn't see much. So I was like, oh, I'm going to start this thing where I help students who've just come out of uni to talk about their transferable skills and how that helps them go into the world of work, and help them with CV. So that's where this started as well. I realized that I really didn't enjoy it at all. Interestingly, if you ask me which part of HR I wouldn't specialize in, it's actually recruitment. So I learned that. It taught me that I didn't like it, which is good.
Yeah, which is important.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's important to learn what you don't like as well, and that's okay. And then a number of years later, so it was around 2010, I got two daughters, one who is turning around 5, and one who's younger. And I wanted to get them some black dolls. So I'd read, when I fell pregnant with my first, I did a lot of child psychology, studying, no qualifications, but just reading lots of books. And there was a lot in there about the fact that children should see themselves in their toys, in their books, in, you know, whether it's programs that they see. Because if they don't, then they start seeing a world where they look different to everybody else, and they're seeing in. And Barbie's really pretty, but she's blonde and she's got blue eyes, but I don't. Does that mean I'm not? So I really didn't want that for my daughters. So I was very keen to get them dolls that looked like them. And actually, for any child, is good for them to see the actual world as it really is. They should have. And when my eldest was younger, if that makes any sense, it was okay. It wasn't so hard to find baby dolls. So Toys R Us had baby dolls that were black. I was lucky in that we had friends in the States that send us some dolls. But as she progressed to the Barbies and the Bratz and those types of fashion dolls, it was really difficult. And I thought to myself, there must be other parents who are feeling this as well. I asked a few questions, and lots of people were in that place, and they didn't have the gift of friends in the States who would send them dolls over. So I started a business then called Black Beauty Dolls. And I had that for, I think, about 9-10 years. I had that running. It was at the side of my desk, to be fair, because I still did HRD, my HRD role, etc. And it was great. And I love the fact that through the business, you know, thousands of people, children of colour in the UK, had dolls that reflected them and books that reflected them. And I love the fact that I was able to do that. So, and then with now with Mahogany Inclusion Partners, in terms of, I guess, defining moments there, and back to your question around how do you take that defining moment into and take it into something that you actually do something with. I think for me, I'm Christian, so I'm going to speak about God. So for anyone who, whatever your version is, you know, whatever everyone else's version is, that is absolutely fine. But for me, I think God sends you messages. And I was having this conversation with someone yesterday, actually. And if you choose not to listen, he'll send it again. And then if you choose not to listen some more, he'll send it again. And it gets to a place where you just can't ignore it. And I think once you see something, once you know something, you can't unknow it, you can't unsee it. So once I decided, and once I started thinking about, I need to do something in this inclusion space, I need to do something that is around not just inclusion in terms of one lens, but the gender lens, about the whole piece. And I also need to support conversations around race, because I think a lot of people find it really, really difficult. Even we know that now, because obviously we speak about it more now. And every conversation I had, it would lend itself to that. Every round table I went to, I'd hear it again. So in October of 2019, or maybe a bit more before that, I decided to put a survey together just to send it out to my network and to just test some of my thinking around people find it hard to talk about race and the LGBT community and possibly disability. People focus more on gender. So loads of different questions around that. And then questions around what is it that you find difficult? Is it leadership buy-in? Is it the conversation? What is it? Survey came back and told me all the things I knew anyway. So it's almost as if, I guess I was testing it one more time, maybe. The survey came back and told me that, yeah, people do find it difficult. Oh, hi, Mia. So people do find it difficult to have these conversations. So that's when I said, right, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And I think trusting yourself, trusting what you're hearing, trusting your heart, I suppose. Yeah.
Excellent. So let's dig into commercializing your idea and Mahogany inclusion. And so I love that you said that primary research was a big part of it, because I think sometimes it's a piece that entrepreneurs miss. And I think it's so important to be able to commercialize your idea, to actually base it on facts, research, and what people actually want. So how do you go from this big problem that needs solving to actually condensing that into an offering? So let's talk about actually the problems that you solve in Mahogany inclusion and how you solve them for organizations.
Sure. So I guess I can come back to how I got from big problem to thing. I can come back to that, no problem. So in terms of the problems that I solve, it's I guess it's harnessing the beauty, the talent, the energy, the innovation of all your people in an organization, so that the organization wins. Because ultimately that's what we want to do, isn't it? And there is so much untapped talent. There is so much talent and so many ideas and thoughts and things that can help the business that are trapped beneath imposter syndrome, that are trapped beneath, am I good enough? Am I accepted? Actually, I know that I'm not because this happened to me. So it's that piece. And I honestly believe that a company is as strong as its weakest people.
Absolutely.
How do you do that? It's as quiet as its quietest people. It's as the opposite of innovation. I can't think of the word. Not innovative. Least innovative people. But how do we bring everybody on that journey? How do we make everyone feel safe? How do we make everyone feel like they can contribute in this organization in a way that works for you as a person and also for the organization as well?
Excellent. So can you give some examples of issues that organizations have been facing in this area, specifically during COVID, that have become pronounced perhaps?
Yeah, I think COVID's an interesting one in this conversation. The way I see it, and that it may change, and I may be completely wrong. But I think in terms of the workplace, I know that COVID's been tough. It's been so difficult for individuals, families, businesses in so many ways. I also think that in tragedy, a lot of people are at an individual level or at a family level, they do a lot of reflection there around what really matters. Am I living the way I'm supposed to be living, the way I want to be living, or am I meeting my purpose? And I see that COVID has also made organizations do that, and it's made societies do that as well. Our humanity is, from what I can see, my experience, I've never seen our humanity as pronounced as it is now.
Definitely.
I've worked with leaders and teams in organizations where they'd talk about flexible working as if it was some random idea. Like, I can't let my people work at home because I can't see them. I don't know if they're being productive. How do I know they've been productive? And you have conversation around trust, and obviously we're all grown-ups, and it's not about watching them type away. It's about what their outputs and what they're delivering for you. Are they delivering the job? Then that's enough. And so what if she puts the washing machine on in the middle of the day, or he goes and starts dinner in the middle of, as long as they deliver. So those were tough conversations, not tough, but they were sort of wading through treacle with a lot of leaders. But what the pandemic has taught us quite clearly is it can be done. I'm not going to suggest it's easy and plain sailing, but it can be done with some adjustments. equally the conversation around mental health and looking after your employees and your colleagues. Again, in some organizations, it wasn't that mature. There was a view that, well, that's home stuff. This is work. We need to keep it to be work stuff. So to quite separate. Whereas now those same leaders are talking about, make sure you get your rest. Make sure you come away from the screen. How are you feeling? And it's just been such a beautiful thing to see with leaders leading with compassion.
Yeah.
More than they have before. So back to the question, I guess, around the challenges. I think the challenges are people understanding where to start. All this inclusion stuff, we've seen the reports, we've heard people say that inclusion is good for business. We've actually heard people talk about this horrible racist stuff that happens in the States. That's not here. That's not who we are. And there's this big, massive, exactly. There's this big, massive challenge, I guess, for people around. I see myself as a good person. I see my organization as a good organization. So it just doesn't align with all these things I'm hearing about discrepancies and discrimination that happen to people. So that cannot be who we are. It just can't be. But then when they start digging and start thinking, actually, when I look at my board, we actually all look pretty much the same. And maybe when I hear people talking about privilege and, oh my gosh, I've worked really hard to get here. What do they mean I'm privileged? I've had to work really hard to get here. What do they mean anti-racist versus non-racist? So all these things. And then we've got obviously reclaim our streets. And then there's the conversation around that. So I think there's this big battle between people's view of who they want to be in the world. And their values. And then what they're hearing is that your intention may not actually be your impact.
Yeah. Wow. That's so good. Say that again, Aggie.
Your intention may not be your impact.
Yeah.
And
that. Yeah.
It is so true. Because I think for you to live and to deliver, and for your people, whoever, your loved ones, your family, your friends, your colleagues at work, for them to feel that intention that you have, you've got to be actively listening, actively inclusive, actively supportive. You can't just say, I want to be supportive and then assume you are. And if you look at most employers in the UK, certainly, they've all got somewhere on their website, in the job descriptions, in the employee handbook, we are an equal opportunities employer. They've had it for decades. So that's the intention, and I'm going to assume that's a good intention that they have, and that's what they want to be. But what steps have they taken to make sure they are? What steps have they taken to test whether they are or not? Have they even checked if they are? And like I said, people looking around the boardrooms, they're like, well, maybe we're not. Maybe we're not.
Yeah. Excellent. So you said that you did your research in, I guess, the back end of 2019. And so I guess you were preparing for this before COVID. But it seems like divine timing. Mahogany inclusion seems like divine timing. So I guess it's difficult to ask, you would have still launched it without COVID. But, we hear a lot of stories of how COVID has hindered the growth of businesses. But in some ways, it has almost propelled your business. Would you agree with that? What would you say the impact on COVID has been on your mission and your mandate and the growth of Mahogany inclusion in such a short space of time?
It has definitely propelled the business. I think, when you start thinking about, we're going a bit grim for a second, we'll come back out, but when you start thinking about death, and I'm sure most people thought about death, and they started hearing about COVID, and it was getting closer, and we're in December, we're in January, it's getting closer and the numbers are growing. You're thinking, oh my goodness, am I going to get this? Are my loved ones going to get this? Am I going to be here in 3 years' time, 3 months' time even? Is my family? So you start thinking about these things. And I think that does, like I said, it leads you to a bit of a higher purpose place. And as I'd already started the journey, like I said, it was slow, it was burning. I was still doing my job because I was still employed at the time. I was still being a mum to 2 beautiful girls, keeps me busy, and also dealing with my own stuff around, oh my gosh, COVID and mortality, and get my life insurance sorted, and all these things, that people did. But then I guess what it then did give me, because of that reflection, is that yes, this is the right thing to do. And in the stillness, I guess, of lockdown and the stillness of, it was actually good weather, that lockdown, which helped. So just sort of sitting in nature while in your garden, looking at some grass, like nature to a degree. And the stillness of that is that, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I had the time to do it because you're not going out, you're not eating out, you're doing all these things you normally did. So it's time to think about it and really consider the problems. So back to your other question, I'm going to weave it in now. Really considering those issues that I've raised around what I've seen, what the survey told me, the conversation I've been having with people, really thinking, okay, what would really help with that? What from my experience in HR, from my master's degree, because in terms of education wise, from my CIPD, what experience do I have that can help with that? Okay, I can do this. I can do this. How can I help leaders who are struggling with this? Okay, I've got the coaching. I can absolutely bring that to the conversation. How can I help leaders who don't know where to start, or businesses? I do lots of work around vision, mission. Where do you want to be? I can support with that. So it was just sort of looking at the different issues, different problems, and thinking, how can I serve? I guess. A while to get comfortable with that. So what does that? I used to think, what does that even mean? But it was that. How can I serve? How can I spread love? How can I spread compassion to this problem? And I guess bit by bit, it came.
I love that. And so what I love about Mahogany Inclusion Partners is that it feels a bit like a movement, in the sense that, yes, you have the consultancy that you do and the companies that you work with, but there is a number of like offspring initiatives, I guess, that come off of that. So, and I want to talk about those things because I think I can tell that you're kind of really multifaceted. And so this is a passion that has multiple avenues. And so Mahogany Inclusion is, yes, the central point, but other things. Let's talk about Black Inclusion Week. Let's talk about Black leaders. Let's talk about it, Aggie, because it's more than just an organization,
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would definitely say that. Hi, Dean.
Hi, Dean. Thank you.
So I think, thank you. So I think, I'd definitely say that for me, it's more than just a commercial endeavor. Let's put it that way. And I was having this conversation with someone yesterday. We're talking about, and she's in the same space and we do the same thing. And I was saying to her, if you need anything, absolutely, Dean, we will. Monday. So I was saying, if you need anything, I'll share it with you. Other people have asked me for things. I'm like, go ahead. And I've also had people sort of talk about, but it's your IP, it's all this. And I think for me, it's not about that. Let's be honest. Yes, I might connect things in a different way and I might bring my own experience, but all the stuff we all cover is out there, isn't it? It's already out there. It's just about searching it out and finding different ways of doing it and speaking to the person and the organization in front of you. So for me, it's a bigger piece, which is why I'll get involved in things like Black Leaders. So Black Leaders is an organization that came together post the death of George Floyd. And I think I went through my own journey, as I know many Black people did. Around I think my first trigger point was Amy Cooper in Central Park, and when she police on Mr. Cooper, I've forgotten his name, really awful, him, not her, but anyway, when she called the police on him, and for so long I just assumed that people didn't understand racism. They didn't know how bad it was. They didn't understand the fact that the police take a more violent view, I guess, against Black people, especially in the States. I just thought people didn't get it because that wasn't their life, that wasn't their story, they didn't understand. So when that woman, when she weaponized her whiteness,
that's exactly what it is, exactly what it was.
For me, I was just like, oh my God, people do know, they do see.
They do know.
Yes, and I think for me, I found that weird because in my mind, like I was always like, they just don't get it. They don't understand. It's not their lived experience. Then obviously on top of that, then obviously the murder of George Floyd. And again, my approach tends to be, we don't know everything in a situation. Only the people who are there know what they know. We don't know everything. So when things happened, I would say, okay, maybe he thought it was a gun. Maybe this is what happened. And maybe he was scared. And when it was members of the public, I'd say, yeah, well, no, they're racist. There's that father and son that shot Ahmaud Arbery. They are just, they are members of society. They're members of the public who, and we know there are some horrible people. It's horrible. It shouldn't happen. But with George Floyd and what happened to him, there was no maybe, there was no benefit of the doubt. You know, this man knelt on someone and he had his hands in his pockets like he was just chilling. You're killing someone and you're just chilling like it's absolutely nothing. I am not a particular lover of animals, of dogs and things, but if I saw someone do that to a dog, that would be horrendous. I'd be like, no, stop that. What are you doing? Do you know what I mean? This was a human being, and the other police officer there watching and standing. So that was quite haunting. So as many people, Black people did, so I'm sort of talking a lot, but as a lot of Black people did, we went through this dam opening of emotions and experiences and pain of things that have happened in the past, things that you'd ignored. She is doing an awesome job, as she doing. She really is.
Thank you.
And even things back to, like I said, you know, walking down the street, N-word, go home, Black bitch, all this horrible stuff you hear. And even at work, being told by my bosses, who are HR people, by the way, your hair's unprofessional, Aggie. You should have your hair like that person. So a woman who's either got a weave or who's got relaxed hair. And I went through a stage especially when I was younger. Because imagine growing up and you think, oh my gosh, my hair's unprofessional. I want to progress. So I went through a stage of relaxing my hair and things like wearing a weave. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think doing that, we're lucky we can do all sorts with our hair. But I think doing that because you feel your boss doesn't think you're professional.
Yeah.
You know, all these things came up, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But then also what then happened following a period of, I guess, depression about it and trying to hide it so I could help my children deal with their, like, mummy, somebody hates me because I'm brown, because I've got black skin. Like, yes, darling, I'm sorry, and having that conversation. But almost what then came out, or what I felt, and I can only describe it as almost like a phoenix coming out of the ashes, whereas this is it. We've got to do something. At the same time, Paul Cisse and a lady called Fiona Daniels as well, they put a message out on LinkedIn saying, we want to come together, we want to do something, who's interested? And I was like, yes, absolutely. So that's how I joined Black Leaders. And where we are today, we're a group of, I don't know what the number is anymore, a number of Black professionals who have come together to change things, change the story, to change the narrative. And we're also joined by a lot of allies as well. So we have Asian allies, we have white allies as well, who are part of Black Leaders as well. And what we do is focus on 4 key areas. I've got an educational arm, and there's a group that's working on developing a toolkit that will support schools as they grapple with race and racism. And the focus there is around helping teachers. And we know that the numbers tell us that there are Black teachers are underrepresented. Our children are being taught by people who are different, which is fine, but there are also people who don't quite understand how to deal with race, which is not fine. So what we're trying to do is give tools to help them support their knowledge around whether it's unconscious bias, whether it's there's been a racist incident, how do I deal with it? Do not do what we grew up with, which is don't be sensitive. They didn't mean it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Don't do that yourselves, you know, all those things. So we're hopefully helping teachers and schools in that respect. We've also got a Black Inclusion Index, which hopefully you'll start hearing about more now, which is similar to the Stonewall measure around how do we measure Black inclusion in workplaces? How do we hopefully make things better and improve that? We've also got another arm, which is inclusive communities. And one of our big projects is working with the Open University to develop an empowerment program for Black people. We're trying to make it free for Black people who haven't got access necessarily to workplace training, etc. There is that. And then we've also got a partnership with Mandela 8, which is Nelson Mandela's charity around doing things more. And what else can I complement that with? Thank you, Dean. We will talk. We'll definitely talk about, we'll put that on our list of things to talk about when we catch up. And then we've got Black Inclusion Week, which is very exciting, very exciting. So that came from a conversation between myself and Paul Cisse, probably in August, maybe September. What do you think about that? How do we keep, because I think then people had started saying that the conversation is waning around Black inclusion. So how do we keep it alive? How do we keep that anniversary around, let's keep talking, let's keep taking action, let's keep educating, because it's taken decades, centuries to get here. It's going to take, hopefully just decades, to get out of there. You know, I don't want to say something, I can't think that. So hopefully not too long to get out of it. But if we stop talking, if we lose the focus, it just dies a death, and it can't do that. We can't have gone through all of this for it then to go back to normal. So that's what I always say. I don't want to go back to normal. I want to go back to better. That's what we need to do. Go back.
Absolutely.
Go better even.
I love that.
Because about that, let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep the action going. Let's renew our commitments. Let's support learning. Let's help our allies, whether they're organizations or individuals or schools. Let's help them to sort of fix the problem.
I love that. I love that. You know, I love the kind of solution orientated approach. Like, you know, yes, there are issues, but I love the fact that you have allies that, you know, are white, that are Asian, that are, you know, it's this idea of coming together, and it doesn't have to be them and us. But I think it's so necessary, it's so needed. And I'm reminded of a particular incident in my corporate career. And so, you know, similar experiences, often the only Black person in the room. Fortunately, for the bulk of my career, worked for great organizations, you know, and it wasn't you know, I didn't feel like, you know, until one job. And sometimes, you know, we have good experiences, and so when it hits us and where it should be obvious, it's not. So because I've been in corporate for so long, and, you know, I've been part of great teams and didn't feel like I was, you know, targeted or treated any differently, when I then had a contract in 2016 and I began to work for an organization, and I remember feeling almost bullied. And sometimes you can't pinpoint what it is because you're in it and it's overwhelming. And because I'd often been the only Black person in the room, it took me a while to realize that actually it was rooted in this, you know. And I can't even say that, you know, I don't know if it was overt or intentional or deliberate. In hindsight, I realized that there was some maliciousness, but so often we're in these situations where we're isolated, alienated, scapegoated. And when you're the only one, it's almost like gaslighting. So you feel like, actually, is it just me? Is this in my head? You know, are they really doing this to me? Do you know what I mean? And I remember that was one of the pivotal points where it actually was like, I'm never going back to corporate. Even though I had had such good experiences for so many years, that 1 6-month industry experience was like, never again. And in that moment, there wasn't, I wish there was a Black leaders, you know, that could have supported me and could have supported the organization perhaps. Do you know what I mean? And educated them so they actually know this is what you're doing. And this is what you're doing, and you actually need to change this, and this is in the highest echelons of your organization. Do you know what I mean? And it felt so brutal that I never put them on my CV. I completely, and it actually took me a while to recover and actually reflect and think, wow, they did that. And it was intentional. And there were some things that they didn't know, but there were some things that they did know, and they could have done better, and they chose not to. You know? And so people need to understand that, yes, that was one experience, 6 months out of 10 years, but the trauma of that experience. And so many of us are living that and have been experiencing that in organizations, and silence. And so it's really important that people understand how important your work is doing. And so even if you are an organization where you think you are quite inclusive and you know, people of your color in your organization feel embraced and welcomed and don't feel targeted, check. Absolutely. Ask them, be open, speak to someone like Aggie, just to sense check, you know, because sometimes what you think your culture is, it isn't. You know, so I really want to drive that home.
Yeah, absolutely. I see your passion, Katrina, and I'm sure I'm still feeling some of that pain that you're feeling, because
definitely
you're right. It takes a long time. It can take a long time to recover, and you start thinking, is it me? I've had my own experience, and I work in HR, and I always bang that home that I work in HR. Like I said, I've been told to straighten my hair, not by one manager in HR, by the way. 2 different companies, 2 different managers told me about how unprofessional my hair is. I have been told by my HR leader again that, you know, she didn't understand why I was so ambitious, because my mother was a nurse, and as a Black woman, I should be happy that I was where I was. And there were other things that happened around that business and that particular experience that, again, I was flawed. You know, you see an extra happy, this is who I am, this is absolutely who I am. But for a while, I was flawed. I thought, maybe she's right. Maybe it's me. Maybe I don't belong. Maybe I should think about another career. Maybe I can't do HR. Maybe I don't get it. All of that is, you know, a pile of pans, not exactly professional language. I don't care, but it's rubbish, because I know I'm awesome. I get it. I believe it. It's in my values. That's who I want, you know, HR and people and inclusion is what I'm supposed to be doing. But I believed all of that. And I wonder how many of us feel like that. And when you start to talk to people, I mean, the CIPD CIPD, the People Management magazine, did a series on being Black in HR. And when I read that, Katrina, I cried. I did cry, because there had two not episodes. I can't remember. I can't think of the word right now. In the magazine, 2 episodes in the magazine, whatever. Publications. Gosh, the word escaped me. There are 2 publications, and each of those publications are different Black people and people of mixed heritage talking about their experience in HR. And I thought, oh my God, I'm not the only one. You know, I'm not the only one. I mean, there's some comfort in that, you know, it's not you, but there's also some real disheartening feelings, whatever the word is, around, gosh, this happens to people. This happens to people. In HR, we're the ones who are supposed to carry the torch. And anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you're just supporting people just to go to those higher echelons, no matter what we face. Because I know that, you know, when it happened to me, I felt like there was the resentment that I was earning so much money almost. Do you know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be earning that much money. Know your place type thing. You know? And it's like, no, actually, my place is way up here, you know, way up here. So, you know.
My place is where I choose, and me taking my place takes nothing from you. I don't want to take from you. I am just taking my own place. You go ahead and take your place, you know, like our lovely Americans, brothers and sisters say, slay in your lane. You know?
Exactly. And it's not about them and us. And it is very much about, you know, us being allies and working together, but we have to address the issues. And so I love that Mahogany Inclusion is doing that. Black leaders are doing that. Black Inclusion Week is doing that, because it's necessary and needed. And it's a great work. So thank you, Aggie. It has been an amazing privilege, an honor to speak to you. Love the work that you're doing. And we are in the Black Founders Hub together. So we see each other's journey close up. Love that. Love being part of that with you as well. So shout out to the founders of Black Founders Hub as well. You know, doing an amazing job. David McQueen, Denise Nurse, and Rashida Abdullahi, who have brought us together. Absolutely. So thank you, those of you that are watching live and will be catching the replay. Please do connect with Aggie. If any of this has resonated with you, Aggie, where can people connect with you, and how can they potentially work with you?
Sure. Thank you, Katrina. And thank you so much for having me, by the way. It's been awesome, absolutely amazing. And I think one of the things I'll say, not answering your question, you've probably seen me doing that a lot, but you know, I'll get to it. I think one of the things that I want to say to our people, our beautiful Black people, you know, despite all the things that happen, you know, you have power, you are empowered, you know, take up the spaces. You don't need permission. Some people don't see it, but that's not your problem. That is their problem. They'll deal with it in their own way. You, like I said, like our American brothers and sisters say, slay in your lane. You are awesome. You've got this. And you know, as beautiful Maya Angelou says, despite all the things that have been thrown at us, and still we rise, and we do beautiful, powerful things. And then in terms of reaching me, so if you type in Aggie Mutuma on LinkedIn, you'll find me. Also, the website is Mahogany Inclusion Partners. So please feel free to put that in, and you'll see there's a contact us form. So feel free to contact us there. And also on Facebook, but I don't do much there. So maybe stick to those two.
Excellent. Aggie, thank you so much. And we'll absolutely speak soon. Thank you for those of you who have joined live and will be catching the replay. Definitely catch up and connect with Aggie as well. And I shall speak to you soon. My next live is this Tuesday, next Tuesday, in fact. So hope to see you then. Bye-bye. Have an amazing rest of the day. Bye.
Thanks, Katrina. Bye, everyone.